Welcome back to another episode of Art in the Garden Lecture Series. Today we have Jake Mallard, UT Extension Agent in Madison County with us. He will be speaking on nuisance animal control in the residential landscape.
Well, we're going to start off managing nuisance animals. It's more, a lot of the issues that I get brought to me is about aesthetics instead of actually nuisance animals. A lot of it's moles running through the yard, killing out lines in your yard. You don't like it. They want to know how to get rid of moles. We'll go into that a little in depth, but I'll give you my 4 steps to managing nuisance animals. And Celeste has got a PDF copy that she can send to y'all after we get done. So the first one, you got to sit down and think about the problem. Positively identify the species that is causing your problem. Estimate the number of offenders that you have. Estimate a loss and amount of damage that they're causing you. Estimate the cost to fix the problem. That's the big issue. Are the control efforts worth the trouble that you're fixing to have to go through to eliminate these nuisance animals on your property? And evaluate the pleasure in relationship to damage. So that's all under number 1. You got to sit down and think about your problem. Number 2, you learn the life history of the species. What's their favorite habitat? Do you have voles? Are voles one of your problems? Do you have a lot of monkey's grass? Do you have high grass that they can hide in? Do you have a lot of shelter for them? Their typical behavior, learn that. The time of mating season. This comes into effect big time when you're talking about skunks and having a skunk issue. Their feeding habits, activity patterns. Are they nocturnal or do they come out in the day? And their molting patterns. So molting patterns, we typically get into a lot of molting patterns when we're talking about snakes and having issues with those. Number 3, you need to apply control measures. Use common sense. Habitat modification is the first thing that I talk to people about when they have issues with managing nuisance wildlife. A lot of people try to use frightening tools. I know my mom likes to hang tin pans in the garden to try to keep the animals and the birds off her corn and out of the beans and the deer off the peas. If none of that's working, you can try exclusion, repellents. Repellents, if you've been using repellents this spring, you probably haven't had a very good success rate due to all the rain you get. Just about every time you use a repellent and it rains, it washes that repellent off, and so it's not going to work anymore. And so our last 3 measures that we go to when we're talking about controlling these nuisance animals is trapping toxins and eliminating the targets. So that's number 3 in your applying control methods. Number 4, you need to evaluate your effectiveness once you start your control methods. Is the problem corrected? Which methods are working best? So when you're doing these control methods, you can use more than one. You can use 2, 3, 4, whatever method you want to go about. So was the control efforts cost effective? And if you don't want to do this yourself and you want to go out and hire a wildlife company to come in and remove these animals for you, you're talking $450 all the way up to $1,200 is what it's going to average you to effectively remove some of these animals. Did control efforts impact non-target species? We can talk about that in a little bit too. So with that going in, we've got to talk about timing. Begin your control program before or immediately after the problem is realized. Do not let them habitually offend doing what they're doing. If you let skunk get under your house and you don't do anything for it for a year, you know what that skunk's doing under your house? The skunk's under your house mating during mating season. They're giving birth. They're going to have a litter. that litter is going to go out, and guess where that litter is going to come back to mate again? Right back underneath your house. I had this issue for the last 2 years. It's probably been going on longer than that before I realized it. I'll show you what I've done this year to eliminate my issues. Be persistent with your damage control. It's not easy, and it's going to take a lot of time. Nothing you do at preventing this, at controlling these, are going to be easy. You've got to get out there. You've got to scout. If any of y'all are hunters or have family members that are hunters, the hunters get out and they scout the animals. They know where they are. They look for them. It's the same thing that goes into managing nuisance wildlife. Use a variety of methods. Usually more effective, may require less time, and may reduce the problem with them habitually offending the areas that they're in. So, let me flip my page. I'll give you a little background on me now. I know Celeste told you I was going to do that first, but I like to talk a lot. I'm Jake Mallard. I've been working with Extension since 2006. I started in Gibson County doing adult agriculture and 4-H work, and I moved to Madison County in 2011 and started primarily doing adult agricultural work with row crops, livestock, forages, and natural resources. So what I do on a day-to-day basis, right now we're getting ready to go out and plant corn variety plots. Those plots, we'll test all the different hybrids of corn, soybeans, cotton, and wheat. I've already got my wheat plots out. They're growing, they're headed out, so we'll be in the fields June, July, getting those out when it's nice and hot. But we'll test these throughout the year, and at the end of the year, we'll put a publication together, and it'll help the farmers relate back to what varieties or hybrids will best suit their farms and their needs, and help them at the end of the year get the best return on their money. If any of y'all been following the markets here lately, you know how volatile they are. They're up, they're down. Right now, all of our grain and cotton markets are down. They're really low. It's very tough, slim margins to make a profit for this coming year in 2020 unless some stuff changes. So that's my background. I'm going to go through a little bit of stuff here. We're going to talk about, I'm going to get my son to hold this camera so I can walk you through it. And we'll come back to moles and voles at the end. That way, I'm pretty sure most of y'all have got a lot of questions about those, but here we go. All right, Cole, you got it? Mm-hmm. You get it? All right, so what we have here, these are live traps. This is a 7x7x30 live trap, have a heart trap, whatever you want to call it. Typically, I use this to catch squirrels, to catch rabbits, possums. When you get back over here to this bigger one, this one right here is a 15x15x36. We use this to catch raccoons and skunks. And if y'all notice, we've caught probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 raccoons in here. We've had to fix this. When you catch a raccoon in one of these cages, they are going to tear it up. They're strong. They can grip with their hands. They're going to rip, bite, tear, claw. This little trip bar down here that I'll show you how to set here in a little bit. It's pretty thin metal. So what we'll need to do, you'll probably have to learn how to take this off to reuse this trap. You have to take it off, straighten it back out with a hammer, wire pliers, just straighten it out, get it back on, set it back up. So we'll walk through that in a little bit. This trap right here, this is what we call a skunk trap. Everybody saw the live trap, and you know it's got holes in it, and if a skunk can raise his tail, the skunk can spray. So with the live trap, the skunk can spray through that trap. This trap right here is a self-enclosed trap. Once they get in there, it's got a trigger back here in the back. It's also got an access door that I can open up to release him. So what'll happen is he'll get caught just like that. I can just pick him up, take him to another location, and then release him or euthanize him, whichever one is best for you and your means. This right here is just your typical glue pad. If you've got snakes in your garage, you've got mice, rats, these are very effective. If you don't want to kill the snake that's on this glue pad, you can take some vegetable oil, pour vegetable oil over it. It'll loosen that solvent up, and the snake can crawl off. These little things right here, this is what I use in my garage and around my house to keep my little dog from getting in the mouse poison. It's a self-enclosed. You put your bait in there, the mice get in there, they eat it, they run off, they die. So it's another good one. So with that, we're going to move on. We're going to go to armadillos. So if you're going to catch armadillos, you're going to have this trap. Let's get back, Coach. You're going to have this. Set this up. You're going to need to use this bait like earthworms. Take a set of old pantyhose. You want to tie them up, tie the panty, put the earthworms, about a half a cup, whatever you buy it in. Put about a half in there, tie it up back here. Stake this trap down, because what they'll do, they'll get up and they'll start rocking, and they'll try and push it over and knock it over to get to the earthworms. Or when you get it set, so when you set it, you have to push this lever back just like this, pull up. There's a safety mechanism right here that you can latch. If I can get it latched. The raccoons have tore it up pretty good. All right, maybe it'll hold. All right. So I'll flip this around. Maybe that door won't slam. So here's how you set this. You got it up like this. There's a little Z-bar. This is a Z-bar right here. So that bar goes in just like that. And you take this, pull it up. And what you'll do is you'll set it just like that. Remember to remove your safety setting right there, because if you don't, they go in there and eat. And this goes the same for possums and raccoons in this trap. So once they go in there to get the food, they'll go in, they'll hit this trip bar right here, they'll step on it, so boom, they're in there. Now, if you've got this set and you get a skunk in here, which I've done this year, and it's not very fun, what you got to do is take a blanket or a tarp, hold it up in front of you, just like this, walk slowly to the cage, and lay it over the top where it darkens the whole cage out. And what that'll do, it'll calm the animal. Then you'll pick it up, go set it in the back of your vehicle or away, and release the animal or euthanize it, however you want to do it. I will tell you that TWRA will not get on to you for euthanizing these animals. If you take them 10 miles down the road, release them, they're fixing to start terrorizing somebody else's house. If you don't take them down the road 10 miles and you just release them back around your house, what's going to happen is that same animal is going to come back to you and keep causing issues. So you have to get rid of them. When you bait this, there's several different things. They're all on that sheet. So your armadillos, we're gonna go through these bigger ones first. Your armadillos, they're active dusk till dawn. They're voracious diggers in your yards, your gardens, your flower beds. There's a pre-scented armadillo box that you can buy online. There's several different sources. They're wooden box. If any of y'all are remember the old rabbit boxes, they're wooden boxes with an entry door and a trip line that closes on. That's kind of what the armadillo box looks like. The armadillo box is a wooden box. It's about the same size as this trap. It's got 2 wooden doors on each side, and it's got a center pivot. It's got a weight hanging in the middle, and so when the armadillo walks through, it'll hit that weight, knock the weights off the slides, and they'll slide down and catch the armadillo in there. If you don't have a pre-scented armadillo box, so if you're going to use this in your flower bed, I would take some 2x6s and make a alleyway that kind of guides them into here, and so that way you can catch them. Raccoons and possums, they're active at night. They're problematic in your garden with your produce. They're on your porches. If you've got dogs or cats that live outside, I highly recommend you removing their food from outside during the night hours. They're not going to starve to death in 8 hours at night. So take their food in. That way you don't cause the issue on yourself by feeding at night. Because once they learn that you got food sitting on your front porch or your back porch, they're going to come in. And if you decide you're going to put it up on top of the garbage can because your cat can jump up there, guess what? That raccoon can probably get up there too. So be careful. I would highly recommend you bringing your food sources for your pets inside at night. When you bait these traps for a raccoon or possum, this is my favorite bait because it's easy to use. It doesn't go bad. You can buy it cheap at the dollar store. It's just fish flavored cat food. Basically what I do is I'll take a handful, sprinkle it in here in the back where they got to go over the trip bar, and then I'll take a few pieces and sprinkle it up through the front. That way it kind of gives them a trail into it. The main thing that you're going to have to worry about when you're catching raccoons and skunks is they're strong. And so what they're going to do, I watched them at my parents' house with this trap right here. We had cinder blocks sitting on top of it to weight it down, and we also had it staked down. Well, the raccoon got up on top and pushed the cinder block over and then grabbed the cage and shook it until he could shake the stakes out of the ground, and then he flipped it over and ate the food underneath. So sometimes you've got to outsmart these animals because they're smarter than what we give them credit for. Your skunks, they're active from dusk till dawn. A lot of y'all, if you were in the same boat with me, their mating season is February to March, and their young are born May to June. So right now they're pretty pregnant, and they're probably staying in their den a lot, the females. And if they're denning under your house, it's pretty rough. So during mating season, when a skunk mates, it scents. It doesn't spray, but it will scent. And if they're under your house and they scent, it stinks. It's not a pleasant smell. You can't get it off of you. You can probably ask Celeste later. I'd come in the office 3 or 4 different times, and I smelled like a skunk where they were getting under my house and spraying. It's not fun. You've got to start thinking, all right, how are they getting under my house? What are they doing? And then you've got to assess the problem there. So I use this trap and the skunk trap to get them. I caught them all with the fish flavored cat food. Skunks do not hibernate during cold periods, but they den up. So they'll go looking, when it starts getting cold, they'll start denning and making sure that nothing's going on. The other big issue that I see around West Tennessee is Well, here, let me show you about the skunk trap. So we've got these at the office. If you've got a skunk problem, you can come in, sign one out, take it home. I'll show you how to set it there at the office before you leave. This is one of them that we keep there. What I do, so when you set it, you've got to pull this little lock lever up, pull the door up, push the catch back. When you pull this door up, it just hangs right there. Come here. So this model, I'm not too keen on the way they got this trap door done. So I duct tape it down because they can actually shake it loose. It's just a swivel. You can pull this up and release them from the back. The trap is, the foot peg is back here in the back. Get up in the front, Coach, and I'll show them. All right, so with the skunk, you'll throw that fish flavored cat food, or you can use tuna fish, but you set it back here in the back, put that door down, and then when you set it and they come down here and step on it, they will, boom, they're locked in. Scoot back a little bit. They're locked in. They can't lift this door at all. This lock right here keeps it locked. So they can't lift it up. Typically what I'll do to make sure it's a skunk in here before I euthanize the skunk, I'll take this, and instead of messing with this back door, I'll leave that back door down. And then I'll take this with my flashlight and raise it about yay tall and then shine my light in there, and I can tell if it's a skunk, a squirrel, a possum, my neighbor's cat, whatever it is, and I can positively identify it. Because what happens, what I do is I tie a rope to it and submerge this in water to keep the skunk from spraying me and to euthanize it from going off and getting under my neighbor's house or somebody else's house. And if you call TWRA, they are totally fine with that because they are nuisance animals and they're going to keep doing what they're doing because they've gotten used to getting under the houses and mating and keeping their dens under there. Because you've got a crawl space under your house, it's nice and dry, it's warmer than it is outside, and that's where the animals are wanting to go. All right, so that's skunks. Rabbits, you can catch rabbits in this cage or the smaller cage that's same structure as this big one. Typically what I use is vegetable, cabbage, carrots, lettuce. I'll use those. Your squirrels, I highly caution you feeding squirrels at your house. There's plenty of nuts around. There's plenty of acorns that they can survive on. Once you start feeding squirrels around your house, you're creating a problem that's going to cause you a lot of headache. You'll have to, if you're feeding squirrels, I highly recommend going ahead and buying one of these because you're fixing to create a problem in your attic. What's going to happen is they're going to get used to feeding around your house. They're going to start chewing on the facing of your house, find an entryway into your attic, and they're going to get up there and start bedding down. They chew on wires. They can cause house fires. So I don't recommend feeding the squirrels at all. If you've got bird feeders out that the squirrels are ransacking, you might need to put some kind of metal flashing up or a guard to keep the squirrels from climbing the poles. You might need to take them down at certain times during the day to keep the squirrels from getting there. All right, mice and rats. These are your typical, the best situations. You can use the spring traps if you like those. A lot of people don't like the glue boards because when they find the mice, they're still alive and squirming around on the glue board. this one actually folds up into a nice little box that you can slide around in your house, behind your furniture, behind your cabinets. Put these in areas against the wall, typically close to a corner. That way they can go in, feed. And you can see right here, the opening right here, and then the bait's back here. So if this is the wall, I'm going to put the opening closest to the wall so that mouse can go on in there and feed on that bait. Same thing with this. When you fold it up, put it up against the wall. This is also a very good indicator for you. If you think you've got brown recluses or spiders in your house, which typically the only spiders we worry about in the house are brown recluses, I'll use these here at my house. My house was built in 1937. Every house just about has brown recluses in it. You might not see them. You can use this glue board, put it out in dark spaces. Typically when I use them to catch spiders, I'll just lay them out flat, take this top piece off, lay them out flat and let the spiders crawl on them. That way I can count them. I'll go in and pull one out here in a little bit and show you. I've got one set in my pantry where there's some brown recluses on it, and I'll show you some brown recluses, what they look like. But those are very good tools. This glue board's another good tool. I had a phone call about 2 weeks ago. A lady had found a snake den, and she didn't want to kill the snakes. She just wanted them removed. But every time that they would try to go out there and catch them, the snakes would go back down in the den and they couldn't get them. So what we've done is it was an old stump. We wrapped that stump with a glue board, and then we caught them that way. And then once the snake was on there, we took the glue board off and went down the road and put some vegetable oil on it, and it loosened the glue up, and the snake just crawled right off the glue board and went on about its business. All right. So with that, we're I'm gonna walk back around here on the back side of my house. Hopefully my Wi-Fi will stay strong and we can keep talking. If I start breaking up, Celeste, just let me know. I'm going to show you what I did on these skunks to keep them from getting under my house. It took a lot of time, a lot of effort, but it was worth it at the end because I kept them from getting underneath there and spraying. All right, I'm gonna stand back just a minute so I can talk my units on. So I figured out that they were crawling underneath my unit, going through the ductwork to get under my house. So I stopped it up with bricks underneath there to keep them from going. Well, those skunks are resilient and they're gonna keep going where they're going. They started digging underneath the metal flashing that's around my unit and went underneath there. And so I had to step back and go, all right, now how am I going to keep them from digging all the dirt around my unit to get underneath there? So this is what I've done. Come back in here with a concrete block, fill the dirt back in where they dug it out. And then I had to put hardware cloth. I don't know if y'all can see it, but that's hardware cloth that I drilled in the base of my unit all the way around. And just luckily for me, I've got a crawl space door right there. And so that crawl space door allowed me to catch the ones that were underneath there and remove them, even though I had it stopped up and they couldn't get out. If you don't have access like that close to where they're entering and exiting your house, you can always use flour. And once you put that flour out, you see their footprints go out from underneath your house. You know they're gone. You can seal it up and then trap and keep them out. If they're under there, if they're going under there, you'll see the footprints from that flower go underneath your house. So it's a nightmare on some issues. You just got to figure out the best way that you can control it. We're going to go back here by my shop. There's all kind of critters here that live. If I can find these armadillo where they've been digging back here. This rain, all right, here we go. So typically, if y'all can see that, there's a sweet gum ball down in that hole right there. That's where he was digging for grubs and earthworms. Move back a little bit. There's another one right here. There's another one right here. And so they're just digging all around here. And so what I did, I started walking around my shop, and it's probably underwater now. I live in the bottom, and there's a lot of water standing back here. Let me see. Yeah. So I'll show y'all. All right. He's got a den right underneath this metal that I've got behind my shop. And that's where he's been living. And so now I've got to get him out, because what he's doing, he's burrowing underneath the slab of my shop, and he'll cause an issue over time if I don't correct the issue now. All right, so what we'll do now, I'll take questions and we will answer them to the best of my ability.
Okay, Jake, so we do have a question in the chat box that said, can baited rodents kill predatory birds if they eat that rodent?
The answer to that is no. The only time that happens is when people use materials that are not labeled for rodent baiting.
Okay, so like the older chemicals that used to be in mouse poisons probably would have, but they've quit using that active ingredient in modern mouse and rat poisons. Isn't that right?
Correct. It's kind of like, I don't know if many of these people remember the old Timic that people used to put down behind cotton. A lot of people would use that to kill moles in their yard. And what would happen would be the moles would die, the hawk would come down, eat the mole, the hawk would die, a coyote would eat the hawk, the coyote would die, and it never relinquished. And that's how they caught a lot of people that were using it and fined them, and they got lots of tickets over it.
Another question, Mary says, what about voles? But I think we can answer this other one more quickly than the vole question, so we'll save it. Let's see. We had one, someone asked, what about when the animal dies underneath, a structure, like your shop or your house or something?
You're going to have smell for probably a week and a half when it's fully decomposing. After that, it's going to go away. The beetles and insects are going to get in there and go through it. If you know it just died under there, I would highly recommend getting under there and removing that dead animal. If you caught it in a trap, get it out. You need to check your traps at least once a day just to make sure that nothing's in it, so nothing has to suffer, especially now that it's getting hot. And if you're using that enclosed skunk trap, it's going to get really hot in there, and the animals need water and food to survive. So if you're going to release them back in the wild, at least 15 miles from where you caught them, I would highly recommend you going out into the middle of the woods, like WMA, a Tennessee Wildlife Management Area, to release them. Don't release them around a neighborhood. I really don't think. I live in Milan, and Milan City Parks do not want you releasing any more squirrels out in the park. There is 1,000 of them out there, and once you overpopulate an area with wildlife, whether it's squirrels, deer, coyotes, whatever it is, there's going to be a disease that comes through there. Raccoons do it. They get distemper. Deer herds get blue mouth. Squirrels, they'll die off. The animals are going to keep the area populated as it can be for the food source that's available in that area. So if you're artificially feeding animals,
I was just going to say, so like that might help some people who are, can't decide about how to get rid of the animal once they trap it. In many cases, going ahead and euthanizing that pest animal is the best thing to do for the habitat. Because if you are overpopulating an area, you have negative consequences.
That's correct. It's the best thing. And TWRA will tell you that if there's an animal in your house causing havoc in your house, if you go release it somewhere else, it's going to somebody else's house and doing the same thing it's doing at your house. So they would rather you go ahead and euthanize it than cause an issue for somebody a month down the road.
Okay, do you have any tips for vole control? I know we've got a lot of gardeners on the call, and voles seem to be one of our banes of existence.
All right, so with voles, I found a method back when I was living in my old house. A tornado come through and blew a lot of trees down and blew down my fence, and so I had to take my fence apart, and I put it all on some plywood and laid it all out so it didn't warp. And when I went to pick that plywood up after I fixed my fence, the voles had created their beds underneath that plywood. So what you need to do in an area, you can use a half a sheet of plywood, a 4x4 sheet. You could use something like a 1x12 by 4 foot long. What you'll do is lay it down in the area that you see the voles. I don't really have any vole problems here at my house, but for instance, let me see if I can flip this around. My flower beds are not up to par where Celeste would be, but we're going. So if I had voles here that were eating my hosta, I started noticing my hosta decline, and I started seeing a lot of holes here in this flower bed. What I would do is lay a sheet of plywood down right here where the vole holes are, and I would sit cinder blocks on top of it, and I would leave those cinder blocks sitting there for probably 14 days before I ever done anything. And then once I removed those I'd go in there and remove the cinder blocks and check it. And what you're looking for is a quart-sized hole where they're denning, where they're bedding up at. And once you start finding those, then you can start using vole bait, which they don't make the zinc phosphate anymore, do they? You know, Celeste?
No, they don't. Mm-mm.
So you're gonna have to go find some mold bait and sprinkle it in there, and then you'll lay your board down in the same spot and put those concrete bricks back on top of it, and let it sit there for about 5 days. Check it again. If all your bait's gone, reapply bait. And keep doing that until your bait's not gone anymore. And once your bait's not gone anymore, you've eliminated those targets in that area. But I will caution you, if this is out in your yard, and a lot of y'all have got a lot better grass and turf in your yard than I do, you're going to kill the grass in that area because that board's going to shade out all the sunlight. So just be cautious. If you're doing it in the yard, you will kill the grass in that area. It will come back, but it'll be a little bit slower. You'll have a dead spot right there, but you can control your voles that way. It's the easiest way I know to do it, because they love getting, if you got tall grass, if you've got monkey's grass growing, that's they can hide in that stuff and run across the ground and run over to your next plant and dig down and eat your tubers. So a vole eats vegetables. The way I tell everybody, a vole is a vegetarian. Vole starts with a V. Vegetarian. A mole starts with an M. It eats meat. So your moles are after your earthworms and grubs. And if you kill out all your earthworms and grubs in your yard, you're going to turn your yard into a dead patch because it's not going to be aerated anymore. So there's no real win-win for moles. Celeste went and took a picture. I can show you some areas here in my house. My moles, I don't have problems right now. They'll be out a little bit later. But typically what you'll do, you'll start seeing right here on my sidewalk, you'll start seeing a mole run shoot out from here, going out into the yard. And so what they're doing is they're denning underneath here, and then they're coming out. And when they come out, you'll start noticing those tunnels fork off. Those are actually feeding tunnels. They got two sets of tunnels. They got the ones on top of the ground, which those are their feeding tunnels. And then they've got another set of tunnels 15 inches deep that they run in during the winter. And it's very good if you know the layout of your lawn and what's been in your lawn. So you go from here, and that just looks, you can tell that they can go underneath there. They love denning underneath your patios, your sidewalks, your driveways, old stumps. Well, I don't know if y'all can tell, but I took a stump out right here, and there's still stump material underneath this ground. And so later on in the summer, I'll start noticing runs coming out from here, and there might be one. No, that's just a clump. They'll start coming out from here, but they're denting up under that old stump bed too. So it's very helpful if you know where your old tree stumps were. Even if you grind them off to the soil surface, you still got root masses and some hollow areas underneath there that they can get in and dent up.
Good tips. And I would like to add that I had a pretty bad problem with voles last year, and it was my first experience with them. And I caught a lot of them just using basic wooden mouse traps, like the snap traps. And how I ended up being successful with them is that voles almost all, like, they don't like to veer off of their little runway, like their little path. And so if you start seeing them, you're going to know, where they're running. And I knew exactly where they were going in my garden. I mean, I could see where the mulch was patted down from where they were running back and forth so often. And I would put the traps in that runway. Sometimes I would lay a pot over on its side and put the trap inside the pot. And that just kind of made them feel like they were going into some kind of like safe hidden area. And when they would get in there, it would snap them, So, that could be an option for vole control as well.